What's up guys, and welcome back to another EVE Online video. Today I want to do something a little bit different from my normal videos that I've been producing recently, which have been more tutorial based or how to do something. Um, Today basically I get asked quite regularly in comments or in game what I do in EVE, because obviously I produce a bunch of tutorial videos on here, how to run event sites, how to do certain things in wormhole space, that kind of thing. But people, they do want to know how I make cash, and what it is I do typically in EVE. So if this feels a little bit self-indulgent, but I'd quite like to address that. Like, if people are interested, then I am definitely happy to share. So basically what this video is going to be is just me talking about my the typical week in the life of Wad Enderas in game. We'll do my typical week, but then also live in wormhole space. So there's like the possibilities are pretty endless, to be honest. And I do dabble in a lot of it, which I will touch on afterwards. So that's what this video is going to be. I'll probably overlay me talking about stuff. I'll overlay that on footage of relevant things as we're going through. But yeah, without too much elaboration, that's what we're going to do. If you do enjoy the video and you like the things I'm talking about and the things I'm seeing, then I do produce videos about all the stuff you're going to see. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe if you're interested, and then you can go and find all these other videos. And if you liked it, then please give me a thumbs up. It makes a big difference to the channel. The more interaction you guys have with it, the better the video does. Like, it's shown to more people and things. So it makes a big difference for the YouTube algorithm. And I'm really curious to know what you guys get up to as well. So if you comment below with your main activities, so that we can all sort of understand what's out there to do in EVE Online. What's also important to mention, I've already mentioned I live in wormhole space, so that's going to have a big impact on the kind of stuff I do. But also I do run a corporation. I'm part of the management team, so part of the team of directors for a corporation called Disaster Area. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video at all about that, because I don't want the video to go on for hours. But obviously some of my week is taken up by corporation management elements. If you are more interested about that, a couple of years ago I produced a series called Life as a Corporation Director. I'll put a link to it in the top corner here. If you are interested, go check it out. I did maybe 24, something like that, videos on that, just how typical things that directors are having to do, and people found it pretty interesting. So hope you find it interesting as well. And yeah, just last thing to mention before we dive into it, again, if you like what you see and the activity, you're interested by the activities I talk about today, Disaster Area is recruiting. We are always recruiting. So yeah, if you're interested, you like what you see, then get in contact with me in game, or look up my corporation. As mentioned, it's just Disaster Area. Yeah, look us up and reach out, and we'll see about having you join up if you're interested. So yeah, cool. So now we'll just dive into it. Some other footage will probably play now. But what is a typical week in the life of Wad Enderas? As mentioned, I live in wormhole space. That provides a huge variety of activities. Why is that the case? It's obviously wormhole has its unique mechanics and its unique elements that you can do in here. The areas of PvE, the resource harvesting, things like that. Some of it's unique to wormhole space. But also, like, I live in a wormhole that has a C3 static, and what that means is we will always have a connection one jump away to K-space. What that K-space is will vary every day, but I will always have a connection to high sec or low sec or null sec at any given moment. And so basically have access to the whole of New Eden randomly, I will add, pretty randomly, from my wormhole, like just one jump away. So that means you can more or less go and do anything you're interested in. You might just have to not be able to do it particularly consistently, so I'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's what I just wanted to mention. But Wormhole Space has a huge range of activities, and because my character's pretty old now, I've got I think over 120 million skill points, 122 million. That does allow me to go and explore these other activities and go and do stuff. So yeah, I'll talk about that later. But every week, I would say I have 3.5. I'll explain the half. 3.5 main activities that I definitely do every week. These are my primary money-making activities. So first one, the big one, is Wormhole PvE. That takes different forms. Like I might do C4 combat sites in my rattlesnake, which I've done videos on, and you can make easily 250 million ISK an hour in blue loot running that. And if you're sensible, you can run it in relative safety, or you can take the risk and not. But also, I recently got a marauder and a golem, which I will when I'm much more confident and comfortable in how to run the sites, I will do a video on that as well. But then in my marauder now, I've started running some C5 sites when the opportunity presents itself, and that's incredibly lucrative. So earlier this week, I ran 2 core garrisons and pulled in 1.2 billion ISK. So from 2 C5 wormhole sites, if you're able to take out the drifter spawn, yeah, I genuinely pulled in 1.2 billion ISK. It was 1.106, I think, in blue loot, and then 90 million in salvage, which is just crazy. That took me not particularly efficient yet, so I'll say that took me maybe an hour and 40. But 1.2 billion in an hour and 40, we're talking 700 million an hour. So that means you don't have to do it that often, right? Like one evening in a week. If we get a good C5 connection, and you can do it in as mentioned, relative safety. If you're sensible about how you get set up, and you take the time to make the space safe, and I'll talk about this in the video because it is important. But I live in a C4 without a C5 static, so I rely on wandering C5s. But if we get an incoming C5 and you jump in, and that C5 has a C4 static, and that's our hole, then just go in, roll up any other connections, and then no one can come in except through our own wormhole. And then we've got eyes in our own wormhole, so you've got much more opportunity to make yourself safe and get away. But that's incredibly lucrative. So I can just spend one evening. My plan at the moment is to dedicate sort of one evening a week on running proper PvE. So if I get the opportunity to do C5, then that's awesome. Otherwise, I can run C4s also in the golem, which functions a lot faster than 250 million. It's more like 3 to 350 million in a C4 per hour. And that pulls in a lot of ISK, a lot of blue loot, which is nice, and that pays for anything I want to do, really. Like, that the golem's not cheap. It costs maybe including the pod, because I did buy a mid-grade crystal pod for it. Including the pod, we're probably about 4 billion for that fit. But that means if I can survive 3 evenings in it, then it's paid for itself, and then it's paying for everything I do nice and quickly. So that's a big one, as mentioned. Then the second of the 3.5 activities is PI or planetary production or planetary interaction, whatever you want to call it these days. I think it's called planetary production now. That's the next one for me. This isn't a big activity, but it's one I do consistently every week. I take it pretty casually. And again, I can link a video here if you're interested in seeing my proper PI setup. But yeah, it's pretty casual, and it still pulls me in somewhere between 3 and 500 million a week, which is pretty good, consistent ISK for not very much engagement. Once you're set up, PI is quite nice. You can choose to be as engaged and active as you like. So if I put more into it, like if I invested more time, I'd probably get that close. I'd probably get that consistently around the 500 million mark. But I do it just sort of casually, so I'm somewhere between 3 and 5, depending on how active I'm feeling in a given week. And that's nice. That's pretty chill. That's obviously pretty passive. If you know much about PI, once you're set up, it's pretty passive. But I do it every week, and I commit maybe, I don't know, a total of an hour to an hour and a half to it a week, and that's all. And so that's number 2. And then number 3 and 3.5, and this is probably the biggest time sink. I'm going to call it a time sink, but that makes it sound negative. But probably the thing I spend most of my time doing, because we live in wormhole space and are part of a corporation, is exploration. But not really for the purpose of exploring. Like it's exploration for the purpose of wormhole mapping, which is why it's called like 3.5. Like they're 2 different activities. Wormhole mapping is a very, very important thing that we need to do as a corporation if we're going to survive here. But like it's the same as exploration sort of thing. So that's why I've called it 3.5. So why is wormhole mapping important? Why do we do it? If you live in wormhole space, you'll use a tool. The one we use is called Pathfinder, but there's like Siggy or I think it's like Galaxy Finder, maybe something like that. There's a few of them out there, and that allows you to it tracks everything you do and every way you move, and if you're good with your Pathfinder hygiene, you add signatures and things as you're going along. And what that means is your corporation mates or anyone else that has access to the same map can see our local geography in wormholes. And that's really important, right? There's no map, it changes all the time. So we create the map as we go, and remove systems when they disappear, add new ones, add signatures. You can mark if there's hostile fleets around. It's a really, really important tool, and it allows us to survive and thrive in wormhole space. But if you're dedicated to keeping it up to date and you're ready, you're trying to do it to look after your fellow corpmates, then it takes time. And to be honest, it's pretty satisfying as well. And there are statistics and things within it, so it tracks who's contributing the most to the map and things like that. So you get a little internal competition going. And I recently managed to get myself to the top of the list for the month, which I was pretty pleased about, but it's partly because the guy who's normally up there has been less active. But yeah, it's a good thing to do, and it's quite satisfying. But you can do it in conjunction with exploration, or the other way around. You do exploration in conjunction with wormhole mapping. So while I'm building out the chain, obviously we scan every single signature to make sure we know exactly what's going on in our region, because you need to know if any signature is a wormhole, for example. So if there's an enemy ship or an enemy fleet flying around, or just an explorer, you need to know, you need to be able to track where they're warping, where they're going, and if you don't have the signature scanned, you can't track that. So we scan everything, and obviously in that process we'll come across relic sites, data sites, other things that we can just go and hack, and that's what I'll do. If I think it's worth hacking while I'm doing my chain mapping, then I will go out and do that. And exploration in wormholes, like I've done videos on it as well, exploration in wormholes can be crazy lucrative. And if you're doing it just as like a happy coincidence, so like an extra part of wormhole chain mapping, then that's awesome. Like if you know what you're doing and you know which sites to run, you can make ISK really easily. As an example, just 3 nights ago, I was doing my wormhole chain mapping, and as I went along, I decided to run 3 relic sites that I knew had a much higher chance of being lucrative, and pulled in over 300 million each. Each site averaged 100 million, and so I had 300 million in my cargo and decided to pop home to drop it off before carrying on building up the chain. But that's all it took, basically. That 300 million was just a side benefit from building out the chain and making sure we could find entries and exits to places where we wanted to be. Yeah, so they're the 3.5 big parts of my week. I'm conscious that the time is ticking by quite quickly, and I've been chatting away. But they're the 3 or 4 main activities every week, consistently every week. I do those. But as mentioned, because of the wormhole and the variety, these aren't the only 3 things by any stretch, right? The important 4th thing that we try and do every week. I'm not very good at it, which is one of the reasons I don't do it all the time. But PvP, like we go out and do regular PvP to try and build up our own skills to make sure we have a better chance of defending ourselves, but also it's just fun, right? Like I've mentioned the amount of cash we're able to make here, so why not spend it blowing up some ships, whether it's our own or other people's. Like, let's go out and blow up some ships. So we do try and do some consistent PvP, small gang roams and stuff through wormholes. Sometimes you don't find anything, and that's fine. You just kill an hour or 2 chatting to your court mates while you're off looking for stuff. But other times you can get in some really good scraps. And that's what Wormhole Space is for, to be honest. Like, and that's why I've decided to get involved and try hard for it. Like, Wormhole Space is for small gang PvP, and the groups involved love it. Most of the time, there's a lot of what people describe as frenemies in wormholes. So, like, there are people and groups that we know and are friends with. We're in their discords, and like we'll chat to them. And if anything really goes down, like if an eviction group comes in and wants to try and turf us out, they'll come in and they'll give us a hand, and we'll work together and defend each other. But when that's not happening, you can kill each other, right? Like if we're wandering through space and come across one of them, it's on. Like we're fighting straight away. So that's what Wormhole Space is about, and it's a lot of fun. As soon as you get used to it, like you need to get comfortable with the PvP aspect. You need to make enough cash elsewhere that you can pay for it, because a lot of the PvP ships aren't cheap. You know, Tech 3 cruisers is the go-to. Or like an Orthrus, or people have got Bazzies, like, but it's not a cheap activity by any stretch, unless you're good at it, in which case you can use it to make money with the loot. But yeah, so PvP, that's probably the 4th or 5th item on the list that try and do relatively consistently. But then moving on, I like to build stuff. Like, I'm not a die-hard industrialist. I do have some spreadsheets, but I don't have lots of spreadsheets that I take seriously and follow and min-max everything. I don't actually do it to make money. I just like building stuff. So I make enough cash with the PvE and the PI and the exploration. So the building stuff is just because I find it satisfying. I like the complex build chains, and yeah. So I don't build any T1 elements. I live in wormhole space, so I build Tech 3 because, like, again, my opinion, similar to the PvP thing, is that I'm in wormholes. I'm going to live here. I have to build Tech 3. Like, that's just how it works for me. Like, it's a wasted opportunity not to. So I'm actually in the process of making a video. It's quite a complicated one, so it's going to take me a while to produce, but I'm in the process of making a video around Tech 3 manufacturing, specifically the Tengus. And yeah, I like to build them, so I'll go out and do all that resource harvesting, which I haven't mentioned actually. We do that, not consistently. That'll be later. Do resource harvesting, get the materials, do the invention, do the manufacturing, and end up with Tengus and subsystems. I don't even sell them actually. I don't take them to market unless I have a big stockpile. I sell them internally to my corp mates and keep them for myself for when I inevitably lose them in my PvP. So that's one of the things I like doing for sure. Also implants. So again, as part of exploration, if you explore enough, you're going to find covert, or what are they called? Covert research facilities, which are ghost sites. Which again I've done a video on, so I'll put the link up here. And if you're lucky when you're running ghost sites, you will find implant blueprints, and combine that with the PI that I'm doing, because I have a planet that I change every now and again specifically for implant manufacturing. Then I build. I don't like to just have blueprints or sell them on contract. I like to build them. So that's what I do. It's not a regular thing because I don't find the blueprints all that often. But like I can show you now. Please excuse my inventory, by the way. It's a complete mess, so don't judge. But as you can see, there's a bunch of blueprints, so I'm going to build these as well. And I build anything Tech 2, or like the boosters and stuff. But no, wrong hanger. In here right now, like I've just got 5 implants that are sat here ready for me to take to market. They run close to $1 billion, just from them, just having them sat there. I took another $1 billion to market just recently, so I've got about $1 billion in implants on the market currently. But also, if you checked out the video I linked above a couple of minutes ago, I found a high-grade Omega Ascendancy blueprint, and when you manufacture that implant is worth. I sold that for $4 billion on the market. So while it's not consistent cash, it's good cash, right? Like, so as an example, I hadn't thought of it until now, but that one implant I found and decided to build paid for my golem and the pod. So that's cool. Yeah, so as I say, I just build stuff. We talk about Tengus. We've got implants. As and when I find them, I build them. I've been building so just some Tech 2 ships, because I don't know if you remember, but for a while in the daily rewards, they just gave away blueprints. So what I did, and will continue to do until I run out of them, is just invent them into Tech 2 ships. You can see I've actually built all of them now, I think, at least over here. And turn them into Tech 2 blueprints, and then build them. So I've got, I built a bunch of prospects. They're sat here. And again, these aren't really for market. I keep hold of them so I can either provide my court mates with them if they want or need them, or eventually to use them myself. So I've got prospects. I built 4 Ishtars the other day. I built the Manticores that I'm flying now. Got a couple of Storks that I built. Built 2 pacifiers. Like, I just like to build stuff. So that is something I do occupy myself with. I really enjoy it. I find it particularly satisfying. There you go, some more Tengus I built. But it's not a regular thing. I just do it as and when I feel like it. Right? I built the Heron Navy issue. I built the Astro. I mean, anything in here that is unpackaged, I assembled in here. The exceptions are the I can't remember what they're called. What's that faction called that makes the Praxis and Gnosis and stuff? They were like login rewards, but everything else that is packaged I built. Just because, so like the leopard was ridiculous, right? Like if you were lucky enough to get a leopard blueprint, which I think I got from one of the events, I'll show you in industry for a second. That's literally all it took, I think. There you go. Yeah, close to 3,000 tritanium. So nothing. 11,000 ISK, and the leopard's worth 257 million. Which is a pretty nice turnaround if you can find one of those. And so I built it. I don't know if I'll fly the leopard necessarily. It's that price because of its warp speed. So attributes. It's got ship warp speed of 5, but then its traits has a 300% bonus to warp speed, which means it has a 15 AU warp speed. And then it's a shuttle, so it's immune to any interdiction stuff. But the reason I don't fly it is anyone sees a leopard on D-scan, they're just going to pop you. If they get the opportunity, they're going to pop you because why not? It's a good kill mail, and you're probably carrying something good. So that's sitting there for now. But yeah, I'm rambling a little bit. But Tech 2 ships I also build, and then because of the exploration as well that I mentioned, you end up with a bunch of stuff that again I don't like selling things on the market. So starting from here and going to here is all the salvage that you can get from exploration. Like it adds up pretty quickly. I've got nearly 4 billion sat here. But what I like to do with that is if you run data sites, and I think some relics, but if you also run data sites, you can get some Tech 2 blueprints. And so I then like to, they're Tech 2 rig blueprints. So I then use this salvage to build the Tech 2 rigs with. And here you go. So there's a bunch here that I will eventually be building. These have all come from data sites, and some of them are pretty good. So like if let's have a quick look at the large kinetic. I'll build all of them. I don't really care about the return. I just want to build them. But the large kinetic should be quite a good return. So for everything on here, it costs 26 million, and they're worth 41 million. So either I'm saving myself 15 million if I decide to put this on some ships, or I'm making a profit of 15 million if I sell them. These ones I think are rubbish. I think 51. Yeah, because I mean no one buys them. If they're the ones I think they are, ships capacity need for ECM and ECM burst modules. Okay, maybe not useless, but difficult to sell on the market. But yeah, just I find this stuff, so I'm going to build them. Similarly for the polarized blueprints, you find them in exploration. Specifically, actually, that's from a specific type of exploration, um, where you end up running sleeper sites like in K-space. You can end up with these, which is very cool. The mobile depots and pack rat MTUs, these are very much worth doing, and they require PI, so that's cool. Just use the PI to do that. But 10 million for 41 million, like they're very much worth building. So yeah, like I just build stuff, and that's it. So that's the main other stuff that I do in wormholes. Not as mentioned, not a regular thing. I'm not an industrialist, but I just really enjoy building stuff, and I like the way the mechanics work within Eve. So I just go build it, not to make money, not for anything other than my own satisfaction. Um, and then just to like go like loop all the way back. I appreciate this is running a long video, but to loop all the way back to the stuff mentioned at the beginning. Why Wormhole Space provides you with the opportunity to do like anything you want, as long as it's not like a regular thing. The other stuff I like to do when the opportunity arises is, as mentioned, I live in a C4, we have a C3 static. C3 wormholes always have a static to somewhere in K-space. Always. It will be high sec, low sec, or null sec, but every C3 has one of those statics. And that means at any given moment I can get out into K-space. And but it'll be in a random location, and so I might pop out into low sec and take my Stratios or my Tech 3 cruiser out and go and do some combat exploration in K-space and run DED complexes for the faction loot that drops. I really enjoy doing that. We'll go and do that on a semi-regular basis, like at least once or twice a month probably. Go out and do some DED combat exploration. What I've recently done a little bit of, and again it may be no money, but I just liked doing it, was I did some nullsec mission running. Occasionally the nullsec entries open up in like Syndicate, or I can't remember what the region's called, but where the Covenant, where the Blood Raider Covenant have their stations and things. And I just spent an evening running only level 1 missions, but obviously over time I'll build up the ability to do higher ones. I'm just running level 1 missions for the pirate factions that when I lived in high sec I never had the opportunity to do, because you just don't go and spend a night down in nullsec. But from Wormhole Space, every now and again, if I have an entry that opens up a Syndicate, I go out and I just run missions for an evening and come back in. Or you can do nullsec ratting if you really want. Like as you saw, I've got a bunch of Ishtars sat here. Next time I'm going to fit one of them up, and if I pop out into nullsec where there's no one around, then I'll go and do some nullsec ratting until I'm disturbed, and then just come back to Wormhole Space and jump in. Like nullseckers don't like Wormhole Space for the most part. They get confused. They don't understand where you've gone, so it's always fun. What else do we do? We use nullsec for the PvP roams sometimes. We'll fit up like Hecates or something and go running off down nullsec. Or ESS bank robbing. We'd go do that occasionally, either to get a bit of PvP or to actually just rob the banks. I haven't done it yet, but I want to take my courtmate's advice and fit up I think it's a stabber fleet issue that you can fit up to be specifically just to rob the banks and run away. That's fun. There's the K-space resource harvesting. So obviously Wormhole has resources unique to Wormhole Space, but these days there's also resources unique to specific parts of K-space. So if you want to do capital manufacturing or faction ship manufacturing, you need K-space gas, which I think is available everywhere in K-space, but primarily is low sec and null sec, and in the specific regions. So if you want golden and amber mitosaurosin, or cytosaurosin, that's only available in Caldari space. And if you want, I can't remember what the others are called, but you know, each empire has its own gas, and you might need all of it to do a build. And again, wormhole space, that C3 connection changes where it connects to every day. And so one day, if I've got an opening in Caldari Lowsec, then I'll go out, excuse me, I'll spend 20 minutes hopping around, seeing if there's any gas. If there is, go huff it for the evening. If there isn't, come back in, find something else to do. And you know, if it opens up a Minmatar space, do the same thing. And it's not just gas, there's also the minerals. So Noxium only spawns in Lowsec. So you know, if you get a quiet Lowsec system, I might run out in my Procurer or just my Prospect and go and pick up a bit of whatever gets me Noxium. And obviously Nullsec has Morphite. That's more difficult. I'm going to investigate that soon, how to really go about doing that from Wormhole, because there are big rat spawns on Nullsec, on Morphite, Mercoxic deposits. There are big Nullsec, big rat spawns, and so I would need to be able to go in, clear the rats, then take my mining ships in. And there's an element of risk, obviously. Like, you're probably in someone else's space in Nullsec, and so there's a lot of back and forth. But yeah, yeah, that's basically it. Like, as mentioned, I sort of do everything with the stuff at the end there. The only stuff that I'm lacking, obviously, the big null block fights. I've never been involved in one of them. I just do small gang PvP and the occasional bit of solo PvP. But yeah, I hope that was enjoyable and answered the questions for a few of you. Ran on a lot longer than I was expecting. I'm at 37 minutes for the recording now. But I guess turns out I had lots to talk about. So yeah, like I've produced videos on most of this stuff. So check out my channel if you wanted to learn more about some of them, like the Wormhole PvE or exploration, for example. I will be producing a video on Tango manufacturing. That's in the works now. And yeah, I also will be doing a Golem C5 video at some point, but I need to make sure I'm properly comfortable and have the nuances and efficiencies down before I start talking to you guys about how to do it. Like, don't want to tell you how to do it wrong and you lose a 4 billion Golem. So. But yeah, I enjoyed being able to talk you guys through this. I hope you enjoyed the format. If you did, please give it a like. And thanks very much for listening, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.